Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 714 podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Podcorn. If you're a podcaster who wants to monetize your episodes, Podcorn is the solution for you. I personally use Podcorn to monetize my podcast. All you got to do is make a free account, browse through the hundreds of sponsors, make a proposal, and create the ad. And you get paid. Really, guys, it's that simple. Podcorn is the marketplace connecting podcasters to amazing podcast sponsorships such as host-read ads, interview segments, topical discussions, and more. Podcorn has been an exciting opportunity as it has allowed us to reach out to sponsors, get funding, and expand our quality and content. Their website is very accessible and makes it easy for you to connect with sponsors. With Podcorn, there is no middleman. Podcasters of all sizes can browse and choose opportunities right on the platform, set your own rates, and collaborate with brands directly without any exclusivities. You never give up any rights to your podcast, and Podcorn is here to support you at every step and ensure you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for brands. So if you want your podcast monetized, Podcorn is one of the easiest and most secure ways to do so. Their payment method is Stripe, which is secure and trusted by brands like Uber and Spotify, so you never have to worry about your payments. So make sure to click the link in the description and sign up for Podcorn and get started today. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I got my professor from last semester, Mr. Professor Willie Washington. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, so you're a professor at Cal State Fullerton and also at community college. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I teach at two different universities. I teach at Irvine Valley College, and then I also teach out of the University Honors Program at Cal State Fullerton.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So your main focus is communication, right? And
yes. So the primary courses that I teach are the public speaking or oral communication courses and critical thinking / argumentation courses.
And what made you get into like communication in the first place?
Truthfully, it was my inability or lack of understanding of communication when I took my first communication took my first communication class in college. It opened up my eyes to what the world could be if you were someone who understood communication, someone who understood how to interact with people and how to connect with people. And it just really opened up my eyes on a variety of levels. And of course, being a young college student, right, it opened up my eyes to dating, right? If you knew how to talk to people in a certain way, you got more dates, friends, and things like that. So I really was fascinated with that aspect of the academic world of communication and how it was so relatable and how it was needed to be successful in so many different aspects of life, from your professional to your personal life. And so after I took my first communication course, I just kept taking more and more and more because each one has a different layer, each one has a different concentration. So you have your interpersonal communication where you're looking at how you interact with others. And it's really an introspective course where you analyze yourself and you start analyzing different things that made you who you are and why you communicate the way you do and interact with people. So that's that course, the interpersonal communication course. I still remember taking that course, and it was probably 20 years ago at Golden West Community College. And then after that, you have your organizational communication, where you study businesses or study different groups of people who come together and how communication develops and how culture develops within those communications. So there were a lot of aspects of the course that just I fell in love with. And then, of course, graduated from college, went into the business world and just said, hey, I'm not digging this too much. So I went back to school, got my master's here at Cal State Fullerton, and then that's when I fell in love with teaching the material. Right. So I had a love for the material, learning it as a student, but then when I started teaching it, it gave me a broader understanding of how and why these courses are needed. Yeah,
because I think before you find a love for a certain subject, you kind of don't realize that you could actually pursue that in your profession and create a living out of it. And you found that, which is very great.
Yeah, I mean, my first few jobs, I mean, I worked at UPS, and I was a shift lead there. And the subject, right, communication came in handy. I noticed that, not even I noticed, my supervisors noticed that the way that I interacted with the subordinates or people under me was different than others. And I was moving up the ladder pretty quickly. Then I ended up with another job opportunity, which I had to use my communication skills too. And then, but again, as I was saying, that world did not appeal to me. And then I just started thinking, hey, what did appeal to me? And I said, communication. I love those courses. Maybe I should go try to give this teaching thing a shot.
Yeah. And in your opinion, like, what's the best communication skills that people should learn? Like, if you want to share.
I believe I have a mentor or our director at Irvine Valley College. His name is Dr. Gary Reibold. He has what's called the communication axioms, and axioms are universal truths, things that are pretty much these unwritten laws. And I believe the communication axioms are, or at least 3 of them, that I believe that people should really understand and internalize and realize it's happening. And the first one that I always tell people is that you cannot not communicate. So I think that is, if you want to talk about an important communication message, it's the idea that you could be alone sitting in your room with headphones on, you're still sending a message. Someone's still interpreting that and gaining meaning from it. And it's also the same as when you're, if you're talking about business, when you're walking in for a job interview, you're being analyzed right then and there. Every time you're walking down the street, walking into your classroom, sitting in your classroom, somebody or someone is getting a message, and they're interpreting that message, and they're putting values on you as a person and putting values on your actions, and you're getting judged, good or bad. So that's the first one, is you can not communicate. And so fully understanding that you're sending a message is important, right? And we call the idea of the competent communicator. That is someone who is aware of the message that they're sending, and they're sending the message that they want to send about themselves. And the second one that I hold and I like is the notion or the idea that the meaning of words, the meaning of symbols, the meaning of anything is within the people themselves. It's not in what I'm saying. So I always let the class know I'm talking, and there may be however many people listening to your podcast, and they're all hearing the same message, and they're all hearing me. But because we have different worldviews and we have different understandings of the world, it's being interpreted different ways. And so that's one of the things that I tell people. They've got to understand that it's not really what you intend to say that matters. It's how does that person receive the message? And you've got to alter that message to make sure that you're communicating competently, and you're communicating in a way that is building connection. And then the last one that I always like is the notion or the idea that communication itself is either passive or it can be direct. So understanding the best way to communicate to people. You can directly ask someone to do something. And I always use my daughter as the perfect example. She's a young teenage girl, and for whatever reason, teenagers don't want to do what you ask them to do. So I can't ask her to do anything directly. I have to passively or insinuate the things that should be done. Things to be done. I can't say, hey, do this, because for some reason that doesn't work. When you become a teenager, you start to say no, and so but understanding that, hey, some people are better motivated in different ways, and you have to decide the best way to construct that message for them to understand what's needed, and of course make sure that they understand that what's happening, right, or what you're asking them to do is not a command. It's maybe for the good of something, right? Good of everyone, or good.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes communication really unique, in the sense that not only is it something that you could learn, but also it's used daily in our lives, and that's very important. And you talked about like incentivizing certain people sometimes, and have you read the book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence Fans?
Yes. Well, everything I read now is for academic purposes. So all of my, I guess, leisurely reading or reading is not actually reading, but I've listened to the book on audio and audiobooks. I think that's one of the greatest things. So I'm in my car for 6-7 hours a day, pretty much driving back and forth between my different schools or different academies and different things. But I have listened to that book, and I think it's a great book. It's something everyone should read. It does. It's before, or it's not really a communication book, right?
Yeah.
It's not as far as an academic communication book, but it is something that everyone who wants to become a better communicator, wants to build better connections with people. Everyone should read that book.
Yeah.
So.
I think in your class, when the first day it was like a introduction, and I said like my favorite book is that book, and like the main thing that I really like took out of it is that you could communicate in different ways, and that can really help improve your life in many ways. And talking about your class, I was in your class last semester, and that was my first communication class, and I really enjoyed it. And now you're currently teaching Honors 101B, right?
Yes. So the class that you were in was the critical thinking course, and because my background is argumentation and debate, I teach that course like a debate course. So I believe that you can present ideas, and you can present arguments, but really what happens where the critical thinking really takes place is when your ideas and your arguments are challenged, and now you have to rebuild them, or you have to counter arguments. And a lot of times, I'm not sure if you had to do this in my course, but I assign topics for people to talk about, and I may put you on a side that you don't agree with. That was a pretty common practice in the old days of rhetoric, where Aristotle was teaching, and he had his students, and he would make sure that, hey, you had to be able to debate both sides. Even if you felt a certain way about something, you needed to be able to communicate or talk about the other side, so that you could either enrich your understanding of your side and reinforce your views, or change your views, right? You have to, I think one of the misconceptions is that you have to always be right, right, in communication or in anything, and whatever you believe, you have to stick with that belief no matter what. It's important to be able to see the other side and analyze the other side.
Understand other people's perspective, and then make your own judgment on how you feel.
Exactly, yeah.
And your class also is like a debate format. We did a lot of debates, like Congress debates and new topics like that. How do you feel like, how does that help improve one's like communication skills?
Number one, communication, I would postulate or put forth the notion that communication, whether it is interpersonal, whether it is public speaking, whether it is argumentation, it is a skill. And you touched on this a little bit. It is something that you can get better at, right? And so in my class, I try to have a lot of low pressure opportunities for you to fail and experiment with communication and through debate, and not be punished for it, right, by receiving a bad grade, but just sit there and experiment with different ways of communication, and then also growing, right? So that's how it benefits. I believe the more you do it, right, the more you communicate, the more you interact with people who agree with you, disagree with you, whatever it is, the more you get outside your bubble, the more you grow. And so that's how I believe it helps you, is because there were quite a few opportunities. I don't know if you remember, right? All of my classes always have a lot of speaking opportunities, or I make you speak a lot, and that's the reason. And I always go back to another book, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about these people who are exceptional people, they just did the thing that they're good at more than other people. And of course, RIP, my example is always Kobe Bryant, right? There are other athletes who were just as talented as Kobe Bryant, but nobody worked as hard as Kobe Bryant. And that's what made him who he is. And that's the same thing going back to public speaking and communication, right? I believe that people do not put themselves out there enough to gain the proper skills to become better communicators. And it is one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, because in the beginning, I remember in class, like most of the class stayed quiet and not many people wanted to talk, and there would be like these awkward pauses. And, but over time, people got used to that silence and started to talk more and interact, and that leads me into the class I'm in now, public speaking. And with your class, I got to conform my arguments better, and in public speaking, I get to present it in a different way, and it has really helped my communication a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that I had one of your former students who is she was in the class with you, and now she's in my class now. That was one of the things. I forgot what we were doing, but she had said, she hated public speaking, but after being in my class for the first semester, her answer was, I don't mind it so much anymore, which made me feel good, right? The fact that her perspective has changed. And this is not going to be a bashing session on younger generations, but there is a decline in communication skills because of our cell phones. I remember, and I always use this joke, right? My whole point of going to college was I would try to get to class a little bit early and then pick out a seat next to that person that I wanted to maybe strike up a conversation with. But now we can be 6, 7, 8 weeks into the semester, and students don't know the name of the person they've been sitting next to for 3 to 4 or 6 to 7 weeks or however many weeks. And that goes back to what I was previously saying is there is that decline in communication. And I think when we have that decline in communication with each other, there's also a decline in understanding. There's a clip I show in class of Barack Obama where he talks about college is really the place to explore, the place to sit there and say, okay, I'm purposely going to get out of my comfort zone, meet new people that are different than the people I grew up with. And I wish I would see more of that in my classroom instead of going. And I started joking around with students and going, what's the name of that person? What's the name of that person? And now people are starting to talk, and I want that. I want that interaction. You should get to know your classmates. You should get to know them.
Yeah, because you never know like what that person is interested in, and you might be interested in the same thing, and you could develop new friendships. And talking about the younger generation, you have a nonprofit that helps elementary school kids, and can you explain more about that?
Yes. So my nonprofit, back when I started the nonprofit, I thought the cool thing to do was to come up with this really long, name that struck fear and respect. So the name of the nonprofit is the Argumentation and Communication Leadership Academy. And that is pretty much what my degrees are in, argumentation and communication. And we're hoping to build leadership skills. But of course, that name is just way too long. So everyone just calls us ACLA. Yeah. And we started with a local elementary school here. It was actually my graduate project. When I was graduating with my master's degree from Cal State Fullerton, you have 3 exit options. You could write a thesis, you could take comps, which is a long test. I hate tests. Yeah. Or you could design and create a project. And what I did is I created a elementary school speech and debate program to enhance communication. And there's a lot of speech and debate programs out there, but what I wanted mine to be, the way I wanted mine to be different was we were going to be grounded in the discipline, right? The collegiate discipline of communication. And so we taught communication theory before we went into debate and argumentation and all of that. And a lot of our events, we created new events just because we wanted to enhance communication skills. And so what happened was after my graduate project had ended, the principal of the school, the local Fullerton school, came to me and said, look, you can't leave us. You've changed our children's lives. And then I was like, wow, this is something I love. I mean, I love teaching at the college level, but then I loved interacting with these students. And what really I loved was that bridge, because I would bring my college students in to interact with the elementary school students. And these elementary school students always looked up like, whoa, these college students are taking time out of their day to interact with us. And of course, I got old and I became no longer cool. And so bringing in the cool college students really got my elementary school kids excited about learning communication. And so what I just decided to do was I started the nonprofit. So the nonprofit is my graduate project from when I was here at Cal State Fullerton. It developed in a nonprofit, and currently we serve about 20 to 25 schools in Westminster and Irvine, in Tustin, and then we also serve my daughter's school, which is in the Placentia Yorba Linda School District. So we have about 20 to 25 schools where I get college students, I get speech and debate students, I get future teachers, and we give them curriculum, and they go in and they teach public speaking courses. And we have tournaments, we have events. I actually have an event this weekend, and can I do a plug? Is it a plug?
Yeah,
hey, if you need a job, we're always looking for coaches. I think that's...
Is there a website they could go on?
Yes. So my website is www.aclacademy.org. And that will just give you the background of the program. I mean, I can, I guess, give you more information.
Yeah, I just want to share my experience.
Okay. You did? Yeah, you judged at one of the events. Yeah, that's great.
I judged at one of the events. It was like the substitution for the final, but like I would have done it anyway.
I get creative ways to get my students involved, but yeah.
Yeah, but at first, like, I was a little like, this might be boring. It's not like, it's like judging like elementary school kids. But when I got there and I saw these kids develop arguments, and I had to judge them, and I met with many of the kids, it's really a fun experience to gain. And I was there for almost, I think, 4 hours, and it was a fun time meeting with all the kids. And I was really impressed with the arguments that they had. I think they were talking about like U.S. politics or whatever, and that was their prompt. And they did the research. They had all these arguments laid out, and it was a really good like place to be.
Yeah. I find that's what I like about it. There's this double benefit, right? Again, when you're judging at these events, my students, of course, the students that are part of my academy or after school programs, they're getting to interact and engage in argumentation, develop those core critical communication skills. They're also learning that, hey, if someone disagrees with you, they don't hate you, they're not your enemy. It's okay to get into a civil discourse about something, about a serious political issue, and at the end of the day, shake hands and be friends. But then there's also that double benefit to you, the college students, when you come in, right? To see that, hey, this world is out there, and there are these skills that can be developed. And I always find a little twist or a little change in my classes after one of these events, where it seems like it ignites something in the college students where they're like, yeah, I want to learn this subject because I saw this little fifth grader go out there, and I think this little fifth grader could beat me in an argument if they had to. So I always find it's this big double benefit, and that's what I want to explore more in the future, is the symbiotic relationship between how we can get more college students interacting with the community and getting more college students involved in events like this, and in certain fields, because I believe you are what's your major? Business major, right? And imagine if a fifth grader got to interact with you and get to take away some of your business knowledge in fifth grade, right? Yeah. And how advanced they would be once they did get to college, and maybe be set on a pathway a lot earlier than they previously would have been.
Yeah, I think like starting from that young age of developing those skills is very important, because now, like you said before, like kids are more on their phones and not really interacting with people, and this allows them to really get a sense of good communication and arguments, and do it in a way where it's not like too difficult for them to contribute. Yeah.
And we start with an easy style of debate called spar debate, where the topics are really simple. Oh, the school should not have homework. Schools should have dress codes. Cats are better than dogs. And they're really just building foundational arguments. And then they get into more advanced political issues. I can't remember the topic, but I remember you did have the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Yeah. And so and Lincoln-Douglas debates are a little bit more serious topics. It's based on Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln when they were debating the moral issue of slavery. And so a lot of the topics there really, really intense. So I believe you saw the more experienced debaters, right? Not the younger ones, but
they were still pretty young, but like they had like their papers, like
their
5-page, with graphs and everything just laid out. I was like, this is intense. But yeah, it's a very good experience to have for especially young kids, and I'm glad you're doing it. This very impactful to have, and yeah, it's a great experience.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's something I fell into accidentally because it was just my graduate project here, and now it is a co-career, right? Teaching is my primary career, but serving 25 schools in Orange County, it's a lot. It's intense, but it is fun when they get together. And we have schools, like I said, from Tustin, Irvine, Westminster, and a lot of these kids come from different backgrounds, different races, religions, everything, financial stability. And what's fascinating is to see these kids interacting with each other way earlier than, like I said, college is where you first usually get that interaction, but these kids are getting it in 4th, 5th, 6th grade with kids that are outside their circle of influence or their bubbles, and you can really see the kids connecting with kids they normally wouldn't connect with.
Yeah, and why do you feel like that starting at a young age is so important to people's growth over time?
I would say communication is one of those things. All my textbooks start out the same way, where it talks about how communication, everyone just thinks we can do it and we can do it well. Why? Because we've been doing it forever, right? Yeah. Ever since the baby starts crying because they're hungry, they're communicating. And I think the misconception is that because we've been doing it for so long, we all should be good at it. And yes, doing something for a long time does make you better at it, but not if you understand the foundations and the fundamentals of it, right? And so these kids are learning argumentation, and they're getting exposed at it at such a young age, but they're not just arguing to argue. They're not just going, yeah, ha, nah, yeah, ha, nah, They're learning how to formulate an argument, right? Through claim, warrant, evidence, impacts. And then they're learning how to analyze arguments. So they're learning the skills, and they're getting better at the skills. And so by the time they become adults, they can see, like I said, I believe so many adults think that if someone disagrees with you, they're the enemy, right? They're on the opposite side. But these kids are learning that no, we can disagree, and we should engage and talk about our disagreement so that I understand you better and you understand me better, and we can coexist. There's so much research out there about the echo chambers, or the people who are only finding and interacting with like-minded people, whether it's online. And I would put forth the notion that these students who are engaging in this activity at such a young age are not going to do that, right? They're going to understand that it's okay to interact with people who don't see the world the same way you do. And I believe that it's going to create for a better political climate, a better environment for everyone. And that's just me talking about the social implications and societal implications. But there is a lot that goes into your personal life, right? Yeah. Having a meaningful friendship, having good friends, having a good partner, that's all communication. And that is, of course, your ability to understand arguments and disagreements, because the closer and more you interact with people, the more you're going to have them. And so that's why I think it's so important at a young age, is because these brains are developing, and they're formulating their view of the world, and they're formulating their how to interact with people. And like I said, I'll go back to that notion or idea that they're seeing that it is okay to not agree all the time, and not have your circle see the world the exact same way you do. And I go back to a question I asked my class. I got the privilege of teaching an early college class on a high school campus this year, and I asked them about interactions, about political discourse, and almost everyone in the class says, you don't do it. And I said, what do you mean you don't do it? They said, you don't talk about things that's happening societal-wise or and socially or politically, because you're going to lose a friend. And so they said that you're going to, and I don't think that that's the way the world should be. And like I said, going back to your initial question, these kids now, starting at a young age, are not going to see the world that way. They're not going to see the world as, oh, I can't talk about this because if I do, I'm going to now lose a friend or lose an ally. Yeah.
And just understanding other people's perspectives is, again, very important. And going back to like political talk that you were talking about, during your class, we talked about the Andrew Yang's debate with the
freedom dividend. I believe it was called. Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he dropped out, which is sad. But nobody gets their $1,000 anymore.
It's that was interesting. That's what I love about when I'm teaching this class during a debate season or during election season, because I get to bring in real issues that politicians and people are talking about. And again, I mean, you may have been, because it was the Congress debate, and you have to formulate and you have to write cases for both supporting the bill and against the bill. You have to write both cases, and you have to get up and you have to speak and to see both sides. But I love when we can bring in stuff like that, like what's really happening out there. And so it's always fun to teach the argumentation debate course during a political season, whether it be whether we're voting on new ballots or initiatives or presidential.
Have you been paying attention to the political race?
Occasionally. I have not been watching the debates, but I have been watching the recaps. I've been watching the recaps. Unfortunately, the debates come on during prime Pokemon hunting hours, and so I'm out hunting Pokemon. So
yeah, that's a fun fact about him. Like, you're the only person I know that still plays that game.
Pokemon Go is not dead, so
nobody else plays it. Like, I remember like walking like from like back to my dorm, and then you're walking to your car, and you had your phone out, and you walked like the other way just to get like another Pokemon.
Yep, I will not walk. I will walk. I have my loop, right?
Yeah.
My car is straight ahead, but you walk in this loop, you get the engineering building. There's a stop there, and so those engineers, they're taking down the gym, and every once in a while somebody will have a red gym up, and I'll throw up on my Pokemon. So you'll see one of my guys chilling there.
What made you get into it?
My kids. It was. When it first came out, I was not into it, but as my kids started getting older, I noticed we were just sitting at home too much. And so I downloaded the game first, and then I actually went to a national speech and debate tournament in Dallas. And I noticed that there were these stops all over the place. And I noticed in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to walk this way. I'm going to walk and do this because I want to get the stops or catch these or see what's out here. And then, so when I came back from that national speech and debate tournament in Dallas, Texas, I made my kids download it. I didn't give them a choice. I made them download it. And they were like, we don't want to play this game. And then all of a sudden, it was the same thing. They started saying, oh, well, we can go for this. And we ended up, it was because it was the summertime. And we ended up spending most of the summer out on hikes in the park, doing things like that we weren't normally doing because of the game. So that's why I started playing it, but it's a little cool. I mean, it came out when I was in high school, right? The actual Pokemon show came out when I was in early high school, and it would be on, and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to watch this. Hopefully nobody will make fun of me at school, but I'm going to watch it. And I actually watched the show, so it's kind of neat to share that generationally. You said you can edit that out, so make me sound like I'm smart when I say generationally. Just the fact that this has been around and catching all of these things, and like I said, it's my family and I started looking for hikes, and we weren't really big hikers, just so we can go out and it's neat just to be out in a big family. There's 4 of us, so we actually started making my wife play. So there's all 4 of us out there playing now. Yeah,
that's one of the benefits of technology, that like it makes you create like that game. If you had to walk and go places to find the Pokemon.
I mean, it's built into the game, and so the designers of the game did have a conscious effort to design a game that force people to interact with each other, right? If we want to go back and tie that into communication, because a big part of the game is making friends. Me and my kids now, we're out and we have so many people that we talk to now just because of this. And it's funny because I think the cell phone did bring us its own little private world. Now we have this own created world, but I think that game said, okay, now this little private world, we're going to make you be a public world again. We're going to make you interact with other human beings and communicate with other people. It was interesting. The one little fun fact is we were in up north, where is it? Crescent City, near the Oregon border, and we're walking around, and this old couple looks at us and goes, "You guys look like you're playing Pokemon Go." And we're like, "Yeah, we are." And then they smile at us, "We are too." And then we ended up talking to this couple. They're from Oregon, and my kids, right? We're all in this big conversation. It started out talking about Pokemon Go, but it advanced and it changed into a conversation about the redwoods. We were up looking at the redwoods, and it just and we probably never would have interacted with these people if they hadn't first said something to us. And so it's neat. It's neat when technology is purposely doing that, right? When it's purposely trying to create a connection between people.
Do you think social media has the same impact?
Social media is interesting. I don't want to be one of those social media bashers, but again, I'm in the older generation. You all don't use Facebook anymore and things like that. What is it? TikTok? Is that?
There's TikTok. There's Snapchat, Instagram. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I believe that it has created a harmful environment for communication, and I believe there's good and bad in everything. And if we want to go back to really, it's how people use it. There's a lot when you talk about bullying and the pervasiveness of bullying now, because it never leaves, right? People, bullying was bad at school, but imagine now it's bad when you go home and you see it online and things like that. Yeah. But then there's also the fact that now there's all these communities, right? Where if you maybe don't have a lot of people who think, look, and identify with certain things that you identify with, you can now go online and build these communities and find the support. So it's all this, it's just good and bad. And I think that's the question, right? Let's do that Congress or debate question. I mean, how do you regulate it? Should you regulate it? One of the interesting,
because currently I don't think it is regulated at all.
I know that some schools, especially private schools, will make you, if you have a social media account, they make you give them access to it. But I mean, you can always create fake ones and things like that. But I think that is a question for reach and things like that. Do the schools have the right to now regulate that and protect kids because of things that they see online? Social media, like I said, I think it has its good and its bad. With any new creation, I mean, we can go back to the car, right? I mean, the car industry had to be forced to put seatbelts in the cars to save people and airbags and all that. This is a whole different idea, but it's the same thing. I mean, it's this new thing, and we've got to figure out.
It's still like relatively new, this platform. It's only been, 10, 15 years since social media has become popularized, and now more people are using it, and we still haven't seen the full effects of how it really shapes people to be different.
It's different than social media, but it's with things being online and everything like that. Students, I mean, there's cases where students are now maybe not getting their acceptance to certain universities rejected because of stuff that they posted years ago, right? And it's an interesting world, and it's all directly related to communication. And I would argue that the same principles apply as far as understanding how to construct a message and the importance of, hey, you're always communicating, you're always informing people about who you are through your actions, through your words, through your post. Make sure you understand how, we call it encoding and decoding, right? In communication, you have a person or a message that's being encoded through symbolic interaction. So I'm choosing how to encode this message, send it to you. You're dissecting it through your worldview, decoding it, and extracting meaning from it. But the competent communicator is someone who is aware of the way that message is the possible ways that messages could be decoded, and they want to make sure that that message is being interpreted in a favorable light.
Yeah.
So,
what do you think is the best way to use social media for communication? Like, in your opinion, since you said, like, of course it could be treated like you could bully and stuff, and that's a bad way to use it. But what do you think is the best way for people to use social media?
If there was a way to, if everyone understood, the purpose and the correct way to formulate arguments, and weren't so personally invested in getting their feelings hurt when someone disagrees with you, I think it would be the best way to build social media would be to create forums to interact and talk with people who don't think like you. I think that would be the perfect way to use social media, is to get people together who are outside of your social bubble to get their ideas and their thoughts and interact with other people and say, okay, here's how I see the world. How does you? And you've got it's asynchronistic communication, right? They post and you post. It's not you don't have the facial interaction. And sometimes that's what allows people to be so rude to each other on the internet. And
because they're hiding behind a screen.
Yes. But maybe that we take that away and we create these forums for people where you have communication in your through like a go-to meeting or something like that, right? Where you can see the person you're interacting with. But I think that would be the best way to use social media, is to build communities, bring people together. When I talk about my first interaction with Facebook that I thought was so cool was, of course, people that I probably would have never, ever seen again. High school, people from high school, people from middle school, even family members, right, who live across the country. I can now just kind of drop in, check on them, and I'm more likely to pick up the phone and call them now because I see something that's happening with them. So I do see a positive, like, building of relationships and keeping connections through social media. That's Facebook. I don't know what's happening on the Insta-Snapgram chat.
Yeah, I think Twitter is like the most is the best platform for what you're talking about, since you could tweet and reply like to whatever people are saying.
You mean going back to the notion or the idea of building communities and getting people who are not so like-minded together? Okay.
It's more like a forum where if you want to talk about a subject, then another user can also like go in and reply to your message, and you could have a conversation. And I think that's like the best use of it. But again, it could be used out of hand since there's no regulation.
And again, you have to understand communication. You have to understand argument, right? Being able to how you form arguments. How do you analyze an argument? How do you attack an argument, right? And attack not in a negative way, like attack, but how do you analyze it to take it apart to determine its validity? People need to understand that, and that's what you gain through a communication course, whether it be through an argumentation course, public speaking course. You gain those skills, but I would say that those skills are lacking, and that's why we have the interactions we do have.
Yeah, that's the importance of communication in our daily lives, and I think that sums it up. And I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something from this episode. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. All right. See you guys later. Bye.